Hello everyone, this is Jeff again from With Individuals. Now, just to bring everyone up to speed, a couple days ago I did a critique of YouTube user R.W. Wiley's response to Amanda BillyRock's Lesson 1 of Economics in One Lesson. Whereas tonight, I'll be doing a critique of his second video, which is one of my favorite talking points and topics on economics, the Broken Window Fallacy. For those who haven't seen my first video response, go ahead and give it a quick view, and for the rest of you, let's check his video out.
What type of boss would buy their employees an espresso machine? I just find this example kind of ridiculous. I think it'd be much more realistic if the owner said, hey, everybody's gonna have to take cuts in pay because I have all these fixed costs. Somebody destroyed my window and I have to repair it. So you guys aren't going to get your bonus, or something very similar to that, or you might have to fire somebody to pay the costs. If this is the case, then the broken window fallacy applies.
Really? Again? So he got stuck on another metaphor, and in doing so, completely misses the overall point of what Amanda was actually trying to say. And in trying to provide a newer, more detailed example, comes off as a little bit petty. But since we're already on that topic, if the boss could have cut labor costs without losing employees, he would have already done this, not waited for the window to get broken to use it as a lame excuse. And employers often spend money on things to keep their employees happy. And maybe not where he works, but it's not unusual for spending to go towards espresso machines.
But since I've read some of Economics in One Lesson, I understand what they're trying to get at. The idea is taxes are a form of the broken window. You're taking money from people and you're using that to pay for something else. However, no economist advocates for destruction.
Okay, stop. First of all, and this is just an example, what does he think of the Cash for Clunkers program? This was a by-the-book Broken Window Fallacy program. And you even actually had people damaging their cars or breaking their windows for the sake of getting a new vehicle. So at the very least, politicians pretending to be economists, if not economists advising politicians, do advocate for destruction and carry it out. Secondly, I'm just going to assume for a moment that he's never read an article by Krugman or seen him speak where on multiple occasions he does call for destruction. First example, if we discovered that, space aliens were planning to attack and we needed a massive buildup to counter the space alien threat, and really inflation and budget deficits took secondary place to that, this slump would be over in 18 months. Second example, ghastly as it may seem to say this, the terror attack, like the original day of infamy which brought an end to the Great Depression, could even do some economic good. And third example, quote, what actually brought the Great Depression to an end was the enormous public spending program otherwise known as World War II. So, 3 separate times Krugman has said destruction for the sake of government spending is good for the economy. Now, to be fair, not all economists say destruction is good. However, even if they don't literally talk about broken windows and natural disasters or terrorist attacks as great things, those fallacies are necessary conclusions of what they do assert, which is that aggregate demand is what makes things go.
They always advocate for investing.
Okay, so he implies that investment is a good thing, which it is, but there's a difference between you or me investing in something or the government investing. Now, I have actually had a theory for a while that centralization would be preferable if those in charge were 100% infallible. But we are talking about politicians who make a career out of deceit and self-promotion. They must always be seen to be doing something even if they don't know what they are doing. Now, does he really think that by virtue of winning a beauty contest, these individuals can allocate resources better? When a private group or individual purchases a product, they are using their own money. They have the incentive to use that money to the best possible effect. And if they don't, nobody else but them suffers for it. Government does not have that incentive and does not economize these scarce resources. They suffer from a few things, which first, the economic calculation problem and the pretense of knowledge. By trusting a government official, you are putting your money in the hands of a complete stranger and hoping that they will spend it wisely. Sure, the government official is usually better dressed than the common person on the street, but that does not make him or her more virtuous or smart than any other common person. When the government invests, whether done through taxes or through subsidies, it redistributes resources from individuals who would have economized them and instead allots them towards less preferred ends. Thus, even if a government program ultimately turns a profit, the opportunity cost represented by the foregone production represents a net loss to society. Governments do not operate on profit and loss. They use other people's money, taxpayers, in endeavors that politicians deem to be necessary. Since there are no price signals from the market to determine potential profit, they are more likely to allocate those scarce resources inefficiently. And when they do misallocate those scarce resources, society loses as a whole, whereas if a private business or individuals did so, only those taking the risk would have lost and the market would readjust.
The economy's not a classic and master in college. To think otherwise is the pretense of knowledge.
Schooling is not a profitable endeavor. We've seen things like for-profit colleges, and many times what they do is they have a very crappy product. They aren't very interested in teaching people anything, rather getting loans and getting money by essentially tricking people. So the problem with for-profit education is it's very difficult to make money and have a good product, which is why it makes sense for the government to invest in education. The entire economy would be much better if we had a highly educated workforce, and it just so happens that public education can kind of fill this need. Now, some of the more conservative-minded people would say you're stealing from people, but this is an investment, and in some ways, it makes everyone better off. So it's not just a broken window.
So he brings up schooling as something the government should invest in and uses higher education as the example, such as, and I assume, private for-profit colleges to public colleges. But his mistake is using blanket generalization and calls all private for-profit colleges crap, but doesn't take into account that the public colleges that government invested in produce crap products as well. And assuming that if the government doesn't invest in higher education, people wouldn't magically stop going to college for whatever reason. So it's an unnecessary involvement on the part of the government. He also still doesn't see the unseen effects of government intervention, only the superficial notion that inflated prices of a cut-rate education are beneficial. Since government has been involved in higher education, the cost of higher education has gone up. Not only have prices been inflated since then, the quality of education has gone significantly down.
I think this is a very poor characterization of economics. Many times you can infer what is unseen. I think what is much more difficult is people respond to your actions. Let's say the government thought there'd be a recession in 3 months, so they do some type of monetary policy. Well, the fact is, people react to that, and if they see this type of action, they might panic today and cause the recession today. This is very different than something like biology or chemistry, where you can do experiments or do actions on things, and they don't respond to it. So in some ways, you do need to respond to the unseen, but I really wouldn't characterize it this way. You need to respond to how people would respond, and people know that they are responding to what you are doing. So you have this weird information loop that's really hard to get across. So really, economics is the difficulty of understanding how knowledge changes people's behavior. If people know certain things, how will they behave? It's actually a very difficult question to answer.
Near the end was a little bit odd to me. If a government attempts to modify people's behavior in the economy, isn't that immediately assuming that the government knows what people should value more than the individuals themselves? If somebody wants to save for the future but I modify their behavior so they run out and buy stuff like crazy, how do I know I have made things better? He also addresses what Amanda said about economics, which is really based off his misinterpretation of what she actually said. She never dealt in an absolute by saying that seeing the unseen is the only thing about economics. She was actually addressing it's an important aspect of economics. So he's really only having an argument with himself. Further, he also asserts it's not important or it's futile to infer the unseen. Because what if you try to do something for which you would want to infer the unseen? It will change what people do, and the unseen will be a different unseen, and now you've got this whole Heisenberg thing going on, and Yeah. So it's like we can't be concerned about the unintended consequences, because doing the thing that might have unintended consequences causes things that were unintended. But wait, wasn't he just saying in lesson 1 how important the long-term effects are? Anyhow, what is important about the unseen is that individuals don't claim to have perfect knowledge, yet can point out that money can either be consumed or invested. To destroy and rebuild, you end up with the same assets. Wealth is not created by destroying and rebuilding. That just gets you back to where you previously were. Loss cannot create prosperity, but at best can spur people to make the things damaged return to a prior state, yet with greater cost, so not the same state. It also assumes that there wouldn't be productivity otherwise, so the predictive assumptions are on the fallacy side. The important thing is that we all know what we need to know. The money is not being spent in accordance with the needs of the person from whom it was taken. That means they suffer a loss in wealth. If they wanted whatever it is the government will do with the money, they would have already spent it on that. No government involvement needed. Well, that about wraps up the critique of Lesson 2 of Economics in One Lesson, the Broken Window Fallacy. In a couple days, I'll be doing my response to his critique of Chapter 3, The Blessings of Destruction. In the meantime, in the About section, I did place some reading and viewing material on the Broken Window Fallacy for those who want to know a little bit more about it, plus Amanda BillyRock's original video and R.W. Wiley's response video, just to get some context. In the meantime, thanks for supporting the page, thanks for watching, and have a great night.